I mentioned in my previous ZV-E1 speculation video that I did prior to the launch date, how a lot of people are looking at this the ZV-E1 that comes out in May as like a watered down A7S III. But for me, it's a kind of like a upgraded version of the ZV-1, and I think that's what excites me the most. It's not really what it can't do or what it isn't. It's what it is. And you know, my ZV-1 is, I guess, what you would call a dad cam. I love taking this thing everywhere to record moments with my family, with my kids. I'm just looking for something that kind of does the same thing that this camera does, but better. What I've also been seeing on YouTube the last week or so was that people are debating between the Sony FX30 and the ZV-E1. You know, albeit they're two very different cameras that serve two different purposes and two different demographics. But like for myself, as someone who does the occasional professional gig, who used to do a lot of weddings, a lot of commercial work, I thought about it actually. The FX30 is a serious professional camera. The ZV-E1 is a great camera with a great sensor, but it's more geared towards like personal content and I hate to say it, but vlogging or, you know, content creating for YouTube. So I kind of broke down like the way I would rig up an FX30 and the ZV-E1 on this little post-it here. Like what I was looking at basically was the FX30, which is, you know, body only $1,800 with the 15mm f1.4. It's about a $750 lens. So combined, those would be about $2,550. If we compare that to the Sony ZV-E1 2200 body only, and for me, I was looking at the 24mm f2.8. So far, I haven't seen anyone mention this combo with the ZV-E1 and 24mm f2.8. Sorry, I'm sweating. The reason I thought about pairing the body and this lens is because I think Sony's intent with the ZV-E1 was to keep everything small, and the 24mm f2.8 is a very small lens, but still gives you that f2.8 aperture. So I think with that combination, you'd have a nice, small, super high quality dad cam that you can just like stick in your fanny pack. I don't want to bring in a backpack with all kinds of gear and bigger cameras and bigger lenses. Basically $2,200 for the ZV-E1 body only, and $600 give or take, sometimes it's on sale, for the 24mm f2.8. So basically the ZV-E1 body only at $2,200 plus the $600 24mm f2.8 brings the total to $2,800. So you're looking at a $250 difference between the FX30 setup and the ZV-E1 setup. The FX30 setup would be quite a bit larger and heavier, and I don't think I could fit it in a small fanny pack with like possibly a wireless mic setup. So that's intriguing to me, and which is why I'm definitely leaning more towards the ZV-E1 with that 24mm. But one thing to consider also, at 24mm, hang on, I have another post-it somewhere. So I wrote down some more notes. Say you were to put the 24mm f2.8 on the ZV-E1, and you put the ZV-E1 in active stabilization with a 1.12 times crop. So that gives you a 26.88mm lens at this point. So something to consider, obviously. It's gonna crop in a little bit. If you put it in the new dynamic stabilization mode, that would end up giving you a 1.44 times crop. With a 24mm on dynamic stabilization, you would end up with like a 34.56mm lens. Some would say that's too narrow for vlogging, but I don't know. I prefer shooting. When I do a lot of my professional work, I shot a lot of things on a 35mm lens. So I mean, might be too tight for some people, might not be. But I feel like it's worth it for the sake of keeping the kit small. Like I said, ZV-E1, very compact full frame body, 24mm f2.8, very compact lens. So yeah, I did pre-order the ZV-E1. I'm looking forward to trying it out with that 24mm lens, and I will let you know if it is in fact too tight or if it works. Oh, and also I wanted to mention a couple of things I've been hearing in a lot of YouTube videos about the ZV-E1. The first being that there is no full-size HDMI. And I think the way I'll address that is that I don't think anybody is going to be attaching an external monitor or external recorder to the ZV-E1, because it kind of goes against the nature of why this camera was made. It's small. Seems like it's almost pocketable. So I think for most use cases and the people that are buying it, people are not going to be attaching anything to that HDMI port anyways. In fact, Sony would have been better off probably just leaving it out. The other issue is overheating. Obviously, I haven't had the camera in my hands to test it, so it seems like the overheating concerns are kind of mostly based on high frame rate recording. So right now, 60 frames per second, because 120 is not available in the camera yet. What I'd like to know is, who are these people who are filming extended clips in 60 frames per second? Like for myself, like the overheating was a concern for a lot of people when the ZV-1 came out, which is what I'm shooting on right now. And I can tell you, in my experience using it for the past almost 3 years actually now, that I've shot with this camera in full sun here in Hawaii, probably high 80-degree weather, at 24 frames per second with no issues, no overheating. The warning never even came on. So unless you're shooting really long clips in high frame rates, I think the ZV-E1 will be fine. So I think the true test of the ZV-E1 as the ultimate dad cam will be whether or not it's fanny packable. And I truly believe that. If it's fanny packable, then it's worth every penny.